Oh, all of us wear glasses. See, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh
Ugh.
my gosh, I just realized that. Mine
How
are
do we
blue light
not know
glasses.
that? We've been working together for so long.
Yeah, I totally just got that. Wow.
We're studious.
So thank you so much again for making the time for us. So, Greer, do you want to go in? Does anyone? I don't want to take up too much space. Does anyone want to go about the introduction of like our project and any questions? If anyone wants to take that.
Yeah, I'm happy to real quick explain the project and kind of in more depth talk to you about why we wanted to chat with you today. So our project, oh, go ahead, Valerie.
Oh no, I wasn't going to say anything.
Okay, cool. Our project, excuse me, for Dr. Douglas's class is examining some of the course themes and intertwining that with the use of UNC specific archives and really pushing us out of our comfort zones when it comes to researching and researching narratives. That's something that we've talked about a lot this semester. And so our group chose to research Southern women of color, revolutionaries, we call them, throughout the eras of American history. And then a few of us, or I am looking at Southern women of color that made change on UNC's campus. And so after you presented to our class, we wanted to just chat with you and get your thoughts on our project at large, as well as ask you some direct questions about storytelling, about recording the stories of others, and about the importance of people of color in Southern American history.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone wants to add or kick off the questions, but.
I know one person you all probably don't think about of a Southern woman that may have changed some history at UNC Chapel Hill. But she's passed now, but Mildred Council, Mama Dip, oh my gosh, at Mama Dip's restaurant, that's why so many people at UNC love her. I think she definitely, I don't know if she cooked in fraternity houses or the cafeteria at UNC, students loved her food. And then somebody said, you need a restaurant. And she's like, I don't have it like $20, and they helped her, a realtor in town helped her get that restaurant. But before she became famous Mama Dips, like on the Today Show, her cookbooks, everybody knows her all over the country. She worked at UNC Chapel Hill cooking food for students like y'all. So she's one of my, I don't know why I thought about her. When you told me about your project, I said, I bet they don't know about Mama Dip.
That's awesome. So we're exploring women not only with UNC ties, but also that have just made Southern history. I actually have been tasked with looking at UNC women. So I'm looking at, or I've researched Gwendolyn Harrison, who was the first student, I believe, to attend UNC, and then Karen Parker, who was the first woman, African-American woman, to graduate from UNC. And it's just been interesting. I'm also looking at UNC's Native American sorority. It's because UNC was the first, it's also the first Native American sorority in the country at a public school. So that's been really interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I may have to take that story.
But I'm going to stop talking, let somebody else talk. I think you really inspired us with your Polly Murray podcast. So we're definitely researching her.
Good.
Casey, I think that was your in your area. If you wanted to ask questions about that.
Yes, I listened to the interview that was done with Miss Murray in the Southern Oral History Project. I don't know if you've heard it. It's about 5-ish hours long. And kind of the whole time I was just amazed by everything that she said and did, and like the way she thought about things. So my part of the project with Polly Murray, I'm also talking about her interactions with Daisy Bates. I don't know if you know, I'm sure that you, with the Little Rock Nine, her involvement with the Little Rock Nine in Arkansas. But so I guess what I want to know is everything that Polly Murray did, her battle with UNC, and then her legal battles in New York, and when she worked in California, when she came back here. What are some of the things that she did that like inspire you the most?
Well, when I think about her, I guess why I have this love-hate relationship with her. It's that, oh my gosh, it's like, I will never be her. You know, it's just like, even with her not even, you know, she's dead and it's been dead a while. And it's like, you can't catch up. You cannot catch up with the way she was thinking. And even after the verdict that came down yesterday, you know, I just think that if she were alive, just her insight, you know, maybe there would have been some cases won much earlier across the country of Black men, especially being killed by police. I mean, just her thought process, like, wow, if I could just think like Polly Murray, which is impossible, but it's just the way she just laid down her arguments. I mean, and she was doing that as a very young woman, you know, and smart people knew to latch on to that, like Thurgood Marshall and Ruth Bader Ginsburg when they were young. You know, when they were young, they were taking Polly Murray's arguments and expanding them, you know, but that's probably what when I think about Polly Murray and what I admire the most. And I don't know if I admire this about her, but she just seemed to sacrifice so much. And maybe that's why I'm not famous like Polly Murray, because I haven't sacrificed enough. I mean, Polly Murray like sacrificed family. She just sacrificed, you know, any real open love in her life and no children, no nothing. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Just, she was like this lone ranger. And I do know there were people in her life that loved her and that she loved and helped her along the way. But in a way, you know, she almost died. She did not die with wealth or anything, you know, no money, no nothing. You know, she just sacrificed all of that. And so I think about her all the time. It's like, so Polly, that's how it's going to be, right? You know, to not sell your soul, to not be beholden to any government or to anybody, and to be able to speak your piece and not be afraid. Because, you know, I guess if you have money, those are the people who are scared of being sued all the time, I guess. She was never afraid of that. I mean, like, what? She, you know, and her arguments was so ironclad, like you probably weren't going to win. So so that's what I admire the most. I'm like, wow. Um, her precision and her thoughts and her writing is what I truly admire the most about her.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, she she was talking about the things that she did, I think she kind of played off, you know, her achievements in a way.
Yeah.
And there are so many of it. She just kept saying things that that were astounding to me. But I think her commitment and her devotion to the cause, as you said, you know, to be willing to sacrifice, you know, I guess the things that you'd associate with growing older, the life that that several other women who did some of the same things, like Daisy Bates, she had her whole family, and they were all very influential in supporting her. But you know, Polly, I think her strength in that, in her being able to be alone, and I guess not alone. She had so many supporters, but like, you know, intrapersonally alone, family wise, I think you're right. That is really scary, but also really inspiring.
I know.
Mhm.
Mm.
What about when she defied the Greyhound bus statute? Do you think, or I guess, how do you think that set, I guess, like a precedent for other people to do the same thing in that? I think that was in the 40s, if I'm not mistaken.
You mean when she wouldn't give up her seat?
Yeah.
That was remarkable. You know, it was before what we know about Rosa Parks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, in a way, I guess people didn't realize that that she could have easily been a martyr, and she still didn't care, you know. Because when I think about, people did not like her, and she got, her strength. I think the incident, I don't remember everything specifically, but what happened, in the Greyhound case is what literally really thrust her into civil rights, I think in some ways. I mean, even when she was in law school, and she knew Thurgood Marshall, who worked with NAACP then, but she wasn't necessarily fond of organizations necessarily like the NAACP. you know they just feel they really treated women right. They didn't want to listen to her.
There's a lot of men,
against
yeah.
her. Yeah, she, so that's all that happened. But no, her fight in that particular case, was just I don't know who gave her strength. Sometimes I wonder if if she wasn't alone, like her friend, a white woman, was with her. And so sometimes I think in that case, I mean, at that particular time, that that may have given her maybe a little strength and privilege. Like she felt, well, they won't do this to both of us. Like I could fight in that sense. And so I always wondered about that. And also what's really remarkable, I go back and forth with some friends who say, oh no, because I like biographies. And then a lot, some people say, oh no, I like autobiographies. I like to hear people, firsthand tell about their lives and actually what happened and why it happened. And I was like, people lie. That's why people like to write their own memoirs and autobiographies, is because they get to say whatever they want. And usually it can't really be refuted. So, we know so much about Pauli Murray because of what she says, what she did and why she did it. And sometimes I think she held a little back, you know what I'm saying? Because we would like never really know why she did something, or, why she was so uncomfortable. But she was actually used to standing her ground, because remember, I think she led protests while at Howard Law School. It was always in her to do that, and to speak up and fight cases like that. So I guess that's what you're talking about. I don't know if I'm really answering your question, but I think sometimes you need that to happen to people to bring out what was to become. Something had to happen to spark, to make one even follow their path, even though they may not have wanted that to really be their path, but they were forced to make it their path. So I think that's very important in history, actually.
Yeah, kind of on that note, and I'm sure it happened in the North too, but since we're in the South, talking about the South and studying the South, on that same thread of women in particular who were, just by virtue of being Black women in this case, thrust into that activism space. I think about a similar time in the late 60s, the UNC food workers strikes, right?
Yeah.
And when the, lunch ladies mainly, and those that were working in, Lenore Dining Hall, were pushing for increased wages, and they actually got so far as to meet with the governor about it. And ultimately they, I believe, won in 1970 what they were demanding. But what do you see, like what similarities can you draw on when it comes to these women in the South protesting, those who just don't see their humanity, it feels like to me?
Well, I don't know. I may not be the right person to ask, because, sometimes I feel if it weren't for Black women, I mean, the South would have totally be decimated, burnt. It's like, I feel Black women totally held up everything, that we're standing on today in this region of the country, and which spread really to the whole United States. Like one thing when I think about the food workers strike at UNC, I mean, when I listened to some of that audio a while ago, the part that I remember the most, of course, they wanted fair wages, they wanted, you know, this and that. Oh, no, no. I mean, it just really boiled down to respect. One lady said, I just want them to call me, say Mrs. Baker. You know what I'm saying? Like they wouldn't even call, like even like the student, they call them like by their first names, you know, like Hattie, give me this or whatever, I mean, I don't know how hard it would be to find that part in those tapes, but I just remember hearing that part. Just like, I mean, they wouldn't even call us, they called us by name, kind of like we were a child, like we were a student. We weren't students, we were grown women married with families and children, and we just wanted to be treated with like respect. So, I mean, you know, Black women, I mean, just the fight for respect. And sadly, I feel Black women, especially in the South, if you didn't fight for respect, you literally got nothing. I mean, sadly, maybe those are the women who, never made it, out of whatever life's hole they were in. You know what I'm saying? So it's just all about respect and working and fighting for respect, even at a time when we had the lowest jobs, the dirtiest jobs, the cheapest labor jobs, the backbreaking jobs, but still did it, you know, still did it and still, in many ways, fought for respect. And we're not even talking about Fannie Lou Hamer. She's like, she's truly my favorite of all. I mean, people were trying to kill her to keep her mouth shut. And she was like, what I can just die tomorrow. Who cares? Like she was like, that doesn't make anything any better. You're still gonna respect me, and people need food, people want to vote. So yeah, I mean, I think I heard someone even compare the voting rights fight with the civil rights fight now. When you think of especially after George Floyd's death, and just the number of women you see protesting and holding the torch. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it was women who started Black Lives Matter. It was just Black women. So I mean, to me, we are the South, actually. And that's one reason why I, came back South, because I guess one of my last jobs, I was a reporter in Milwaukee, which I enjoyed Milwaukee because, everybody North was South, pretty much. So I enjoyed that. But and I enjoyed being, my time in Michigan. I love Detroit, even with all its struggles. I love the people there because of the Detroit Great Migration Line. Many of them came from North Carolina. They came up this way, just like a lot of the Black people in Chicago came up maybe Louisiana, Memphis, Tennessee way. That was their great migration line. So I think that's why I like Detroit, because I think so many people came from this way. But no. And, finally, hopefully some statues will go up to Black women. I just saw a statue not too long ago in North Carolina. Too bad it was a touring statue. It's a beautiful statue of Harriet Tubman. And they were moving the statue to different museums along the way of the Underground Railroad. So it was in Halifax, North Carolina for just maybe a month or so. And so I'm just like, will somebody please, you know, all poor women too, you know, all poor women who had to speak up. So yeah, I think Black women's place, I guess, in the South and holding her up has been phenomenal. And I'm glad I'm here at this time, actually. I don't know exactly what you asked me, but
No, that
I
was
just babbled along a little bit. It just made me think like, wow, you know.
no. So I guess a follow-up to that, and then I'll shut up for real, is what do you see in the future when it comes to activism in the South? Just people of color, it seems to me anyway. I mean, my mother is white and my father is Black. So of course society sees me as a Black man. So growing up in the South and having a grandmother on one side who grew up on a former slave plantation outside of Albany, Georgia, that was previously owned by a donor to UNC, versus having great
Mhm.
grandparents on the other side that didn't even want to meet me when I was born because I was muddying the bloodline. Like, how do you take this convoluted and complex, these stories from the South, these women who are the backbones of their families, and where do we go from here? Because we still have the George Floyds, the Breonna Taylors, the Micaiahs, you know, of yesterday. What do you do to not get drained? Or in the people that you've talked to, the people that you've researched, what gives you hope for the future, I guess is what I'm asking.
Mhm. Well, one thing that gives me hope for the future, and I hope a lot of young people of color, I've always hoped that they take advantage of their ability to get an education. Because I've joked with several friends in the past years about the rising momentum of, say, activism and Black Lives Matter. I said, because more Black people can read and write now. What do you think? I said, if you keep going back generations, you know, fewer people of color could read and write. You know, a lot were illiterate. They were not, we know our history. We weren't allowed to read and write. And as the years passed and the decades and the generations passed, you have a larger pool of people of color who can, guess what, read and write. So we don't have to listen to other people's bullshit anymore. We're like, something is wrong with this picture. So yeah, what is it? The United Negro College Fund? Well, they say, I think, the mind is a terrible thing to waste. Like that's their big motto. But it's another motto. It's like, you know, I don't know. Not reading and writing is fundamental. I'm trying to think of what this one saying that I always used to latch on to, like, goodness gracious, you messed up if you let us read and write. That, and not only when you can read and write, that means you can even better communicate with the masses. And that's what's happening. You know, something can happen very small, say all the way in Fort Myers, Florida, you know, for example, and you turn around and people in just literally hours or minutes, you know, we know it, we'll know it in North Carolina, and then our cousins will know it in Mississippi, and then our relatives in Oakland will know it. Like, so what I like so much and why I have hope is that if we just continue to keep reading and writing, you know, one of my favorite sayings from Barack Obama, when people would ask him, especially young people who would like to look at him and say, I can't be like you, right? You know, how hard is it to be like a Barack Obama? And he was like, what? It's like, it's easy to be me. He was like, what's hard was, you know, working day in and day out, you know, trying to feed yourself. He was like, going to law school, all I had to do was read. He's like, that's all I had to do was read, 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 read. And it's just like, just by doing that, reading, and of course you have to hope there's a semblance of telling the truth, right? So read and communicating the truth. Sometimes I actually think that a lot of the marches and protests, I was like, I wonder, do we need them as much? Because not everyone can express themselves in ways that's not that type of show activism. But I'm like, man, if a few hundred people just stop eating at a certain restaurant in town, guess what? It's over. You know, you'll get what you want, believe it or not. And I just, not only do I wish we would read, I do wish young people would also, like you guys, read your history, because that the bus boycott that took place, with Rosa Parks, phenomenal, just by word of mouth. They didn't have cell phones. Many probably didn't even have telephones. They definitely didn't have cars. They had to take the bus, but they were like, we're not riding the bus. How about that? Just not going to do it. Hitching a ride with friends, walking to work, shut the system down. They didn't even have time to protest and picket and chant. They just said, well, what's the most discriminatory thing happening to us that's affecting our livelihood today? Nasty bus drivers who treat us like shit, make us sit in the back in the broken seats, just total disrespect. So I believe, if you continue to demand respect, and hopefully in mass, and convincing others to do the same, this great wave of activism will continue. That's what I think.
I guess kind of go. Sorry.
No, keep
I
going.
guess kind of going off that point. I'm studying the 70s and the 80s, and the women who I've researched are, I think, all Black women. So like I'm talking about Ella Baker and Jessica Simpkins, who were both like not necessarily given, but had larger roles in what is considered like the long civil rights movement after like the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. And they talk about like the institutional barriers that they faced. Like the church was like a really big way that, Martin Luther King Jr. was the first leader of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And so all these churches were allied behind him, and Ella Baker was the vice president. And when he died, she took over, and every other employee was fired after, like, because she was in leadership as a Black woman. And so she basically had to like build it again from the ground up.
Right.
And she did it relatively successfully, but not because they were happy about it at all. And so it just made me think about like, how do we navigate those situations? How do we overcome that and elevate these women who went through so much and faced so much adversity? And how do we honor them appropriately? And then how do we also talk about the barriers that exist like within our own community to the success and furthering of the movement?
I don't know. It's hard. And I always sometimes start with the census. I'm like, first of all, this country is barely 13% Black. If you're talking, it's not a lot of people. It's a lot of weight on us, right? To hold, we're a very small part of the population, to be honest with you. We know the Latino population is more like 15%, it's it's not that many of us. And sadly, some of the same changes that Black folks are hoping for, I guess white people are hoping for. Like they're hoping that the racists, die out, right? It's like, you can't have sometimes change when you still sometimes have the same mindset, and then you have a pool of people still poisoning the next generation, right? Because sometimes you're your own worst enemy, clearly, and so that definitely, you can't ignore part of that fight. That's another thing about Pauli Murray. She was like, okay, you're going to have this great march on Washington, to help, with Martin Luther King. The whole the program didn't have any women on it. And it was like Pauli Murray who had to say, oh no, like all the women who have, gotten beaten as well, stood behind you, cook your food, made it so we all could march, just held it down. And so, yeah, I definitely hate that Black women, we have to scream, to be heard. You would hope that we wouldn't have to do that now, but we do. And we get chastised for it. We lose our jobs over it, all sorts of things. And so I don't even know. I want to just believe maybe time will heal that. But goodness gracious, I mean, how long will that take? We've been waiting a long time. I don't know. It just takes education and then I love the census because that's the only most accurate count we have in this country or the world, and there are more women. It's no reason why it is more women in the United States. It's more white women than Black women. I mean, it's more white women than even white men. It's more Black women than Black men. And that's why I did a story not too long ago called Black Women Vote. Because and what grew that story was that it was really no reason for Hillary Clinton to not have beat Donald Trump for president. I mean, you could just sit and look at it and say, oh, well, she was this. It's like the only reason she didn't win is because women did not vote for her. Especially white women did not vote for her. And that's why I say, well, we can look at the numbers now that show Black women voted for her like 97%. But I don't know. I don't even think it was barely 50% or so of white women who voted for Hillary Clinton. So that's how Hillary Clinton lost, because women, you would think her own people, white women, did not vote for her for whatever reason. And that's what I think makes Black women so special in a way that even in our small numbers, we can hold up an elephant. Because usually we, despite how we feel about something, in order to get anything, we have to come together in a tight mass. And it's been proven time and time again, especially come election day. And that's why so many people talk about, Stacey Abrams in Atlanta, because they were like, what she was able to do, she got people registered to vote. She was like, that's the only voice you have. So I don't know. I mean, it's a shame we still have to say, oh, people have to vote. That'll change it. People who don't want to pay women fair wages and pay Black women. Black women still make the lowest wages of, the group that we're usually referring to: white men, Black men, white women, Black women, at the bottom. It's like, wow, I wonder if we can vote that congressperson out. I wonder if we could vote that sheriff out. I wonder if we can vote that district attorney out. Well, you can, and so I don't know. Whenever someone asks me this question, I'm just like, oh, all you have to do is vote. That's really all you have to do. And usually voting, I have a skill. I consider myself a tattletale. I don't know if I told you that in class. You just have to, like, if somebody does something to you, you just tell on them. This is very little and off note, and I have a lot to do, and I know you guys do too, but just the other day, maybe it was last week, I was out and about. I was like, oh my goodness, this is like 7:00. I'm gonna go to Krispy Kreme Donuts and get a dozen hot donuts, because that's when the hot light is supposed to be on. So I get there, the line is long, the light isn't on. When I get to the thing, I said, I need a dozen hot. They're like, we don't have any. I said, how come? I was like, because your website says from 6 to 10 or whatever, the donut's supposed to be hot. And I said, well, do you have a new time for the hot donuts? And she was like, I don't know. I said, really? And I said, well, I guess I need to speak to your manager. She says, well, when you get up to the window, I'll let you speak to her. I said, that's okay. This has to go higher. I don't want to speak to your manager. So when I get home, I go on the Krispy Kreme website, it's based in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I call and I just sit on hold for like 30 minutes, whatever. And eventually somebody comes on and I tell them, I said, I would like to report that the Krispy Kreme franchise at so-and-so Hillsborough Road is the worst in the state of North Carolina. And I said, I know this because I have been to most of the Krispy Kremes, not that many of them. It's hard to find a Krispy Kreme donut. I said, so I've been to probably all of them. I said, the best one, of course, is the one in Raleigh that sticks to its time of 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. hot, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. hot. And I said, and what is Krispy Kreme without hot donuts? I said, what is McDonald's without French fries? What if I went through the drive-thru and McDonald's says, we don't have any French fries? I said, maybe that McDonald's should shut down. This is how I was talking to that lady. And I said, I've been to Krispy Kremes from here to Tokyo. I said, I know Krispy Kreme. I've reported on Krispy Kreme. I told us I'm a reporter. And I said, and I don't appreciate, I said, this is not the first time I couldn't get hot donuts at that Krispy Kreme. I said, so if your business cannot accommodate the pandemic, if you haven't figured out, how to still provide your product during this time, I said, maybe you should close down. I said, or maybe you should put accurate hours. Or maybe you should, I just went down the line of what they could do to save their business. Or me as a customer, right? Because I can't possibly, and I'm gonna tell you, I was telling that lady that at maybe 10:30 at night. And she says, would you like to leave your name and your number? I said, I surely would in my email. And you always don't be afraid to speak. And that's another thing. You have to leave your name. All you have is your name. So you give them your name and number. And I tell you, by 9:05 the next morning, the manager from that Krispy Kreme on Hillsborough called me. And I was like, what's the problem? How come you can't have hot donuts? And she was like, ma'am, I'm so sorry. People just will not show up for work. She was like, and we had a dough person that didn't show up and we ran out of this. I was like, I say, you need to have some type of sign that says, no hot donuts, we fucked up today. Maybe you should put that out there. And she was so sweet. And she was like, will you please, she was like trying her best, and I was like, and I could tell, she was a young Black woman too. Her name is Jackie. And she was like, will you please come by here and get a hot dozen donuts? And I was like, I'll try when I have time. I said, but you got to do better, Jackie. And she was like, I don't know if people got their stimulus checks and they just will not show up for work. And I was like, you have to do something about that. You have to be honest to your customer. And then I went down the line with her, how I've eaten. I've stood in a long line for Krispy Kreme donuts in Tokyo. And you know what they do? While you're standing there waiting to get your donuts, they have somebody walk down the line giving you free donuts to eat while you wait. And I was like, I know there's a Krispy Kreme University. I told her everything I know. I know how to run a Krispy Kreme. And you just have to wear people down. So that's a long story, but no, you wear them down with the truth and you do not take their excuse for not doing better and not for wanting more. And I'm sorry, we only make up 13% of the country. You still have, that means you got to speak up more, right? So yeah, that's kind of what I do. That's what I tell everybody. I'm like, they said, Lydia, don't tell on them. I was like, yeah, I'm about to shut them down. I said, they don't want to do that. They don't, maybe they don't want to go to school. Give somebody else their spot. Maybe they don't know the stimulus check will run out and they're going to have to go, they're going to need money again. I was like, nope. So anyway, I'm sorry. I'm not.
No, that was fantastic. I'm so glad you guys.
No, but I was like, goodness gracious. But yeah, when I have time, I don't tell on enough people, and I get it from my father, because he would tell on somebody in a second. And back then, of course, they didn't have, email, and he would just write a letter. And he collected ink pens. So he was like, boy, which $500 ink pen I'm using today? Handwrite. I was in the mall and I went to this jewelry store just to take a look around because I washed my car. I remember this, I washed my car this morning and I was letting it dry. So I said, let me go by the mall. So I went into the store and no one asked me if I needed any help. Nobody offered me any help and nobody would say anything to me in your store. And he says, so, but when I went back to your store a few days later, after I came from my office, dressed a certain other kind of way, people did ask me if I could, if they could help me. Like they had no idea who you are. And boy, I mean, my father, I know he's gotten people fired. He usually doesn't ask to get them fired. He just says, I recommend racial so-and-so training. And once he says that kind of thing, that they really get really rattled. Like they call and write back and they apologize. And he just says, I think we all can do better. That reverse psychology, he wrote the best letters. So that's why I say literacy is a powerful thing. Powerful. And, if people would just use that power, I don't know.
Absolutely. I'm gonna wrap this up so Valerie can go and ask her questions. I don't want to hold you up, but I just think part of,
oh, sorry, what time is it? 4:30.
it is 4:30.
Sorry. I'm just battling because I'm tired because I gotta finish the story.
I feel that. I was just gonna say, I think part of the reason why you were talking about like the statues and how there aren't enough like monuments to Black women, I think part of the reason why that is what you're saying is that it requires like a degree of like agency and privilege and extra time to call Krispy Kreme and wait on hold and do all of these things, or to write letters, or even to like organize in that capacity when you have so many other things on your plate. And so I think part of that is the reason why, like, even when we look in the archives for this project, like there aren't as many pictures and documents that came from Black women, even though there are these interviews of people, like it's always like after the fact, like Ella Baker's talking about the 40s in 1975, because that's when she had the space and she was like functionally retired. And so it ends up being like delayed. Valerie, take it away.
I know.
Yeah. To follow up on that, sorry, last question. So I know you talked about like just voting earlier and how like I'm just looking at a statistic right now, like 90% of Black women voters voted for Joe Biden, while only 55% of white women voted for Trump. So like part of the reason why we did this project on specifically women of color activists is because like a lot of times like in history books, like we'll only spotlight like Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and those white women were not intersectional in their feminism and like did not give women of color the rights to vote. It was just for them. So how do you see like, and how do you think like in today's society, like yes, like it's obviously like the exit poll 55% of white women voting for Trump is still showing how white women will continue to like choose the patriarchy and the whiteness over the triple oppression that women of color face of race, class, and gender. So how else do you see that manifest in activists today besides just the voting polls? I think you're muted.
I'm muted. So in what you just said, did you ask a question?
Yes.
Did you ask me a question? You were telling, I mean, I was trying to listen for the specific question.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I was just wondering like how you see like in today's society and like in the activism realm, like how like have white women progressed, or are they still in some ways like still centering themselves, still like not being intersectional with their feminism, and what can they do to like make space and like step down so women of color can get the spotlight that they deserve?
Wow, I probably shouldn't say anything on that, but there've been some I've taken part in different diversity type webinars, especially during this during this pandemic. There've been so many, and that's really one of the number one things that comes up over and over. How do you get people in the so-called majority dominant, race to not center everything around them? Eh, I mean, there are many ways not to do it. I mean, I don't even think I could go in them. I wish I could even pull up my notes. I've taken so many notes on that, but it's like, jokingly, the first thing they can do is not cry. What about that? I just don't, because, we've had enough of the white tears. I mean, it's like, and I try I have many of my friends are white. Not, I can see, I can't say, oh, I have a white friend. No, I have too many. I have many, many, many. And they love to apologize a lot. I was like, we're really tired of the apologies. We just want action. And actually, what the biggest thing is, you literally have to give up something. You have to give up something that you have or that you've taken. I even talked about my workplace, for example. They always are having meetings about how to center. And that's one of my favorite, it's overused, but I'm like, when I do my work, I always try to center Black voices. It's not what a white expert says, because it's easier to get that white expert. Is more of them are experts. They're like dropping apples from a tree. But if you want another voice, you're going to have to work a little bit harder to get it, and I've always just wanted to be at work recognized by, all my white managers, by saying, maybe if I didn't finish a story as fast as they wanted, I say, do you know how hard it was to find, since I'm working extra hard to center this conversation around Black voices, you know how hard it was to find somebody who I could interview on this topic? So to them, that's not even important. In one breath, they're saying, oh, like if you go to WUNC's website, they have this whole Black Lives Matter mission statement, all this stuff on there. And that's what everybody has. But to really live up to it and honor it and admit that we're not all the same, and that we do not get from point A to point B the same way, or in the same time, or in the same language, or in the it takes a lot of allowing people to be, allowing people to be. And really, the short way of saying that is really leave me the fuck alone. How about that? Just, leave me alone and let my work speak for itself. So it's like, it's so many gatekeepers, and they've always been gatekeepers, but they pretend like they're not, just because, maybe they've hired one or two more Black people, or maybe they've given everybody a 1% raise. I mean, whatever they think will help them do better, but still the condescension every day, the microaggressions every day, is just it's so waste of time. So I think, when they say people have to look in the mirror, maybe they need to walk around with recording themselves on their phone and playing it back. Sometimes you just wonder, do they know what they're saying? Like, do they know what they're saying? And if someone is upset with you, why is that person upset with you? But I can't even, the list is so long. When I talk to my friends every day from all over the country. When I say friends, I'm saying, say, Black women, for example, about what happened to them that day. I'm talking about very smart, educated women. Some of them have a lot of money, some of them don't. But they're all smart, because else I wouldn't talk to them, right? And so, but we all have these very similar, like, I wonder how we get through the day, actually. I don't know how we get through the day, or the year, or the month, actually. So it's just I don't know, maybe it's that's why we have to believe the civil rights mantra, whether we want to or not. You know, we got to keep on, like I said, walking, keep on talking. Like, you have to keep doing it. So, I mean, that's just part of who we are. I guess. I mean, that's how I see it. That's what I have to do. But yeah, I wish people who have power, you got to be willing to give up some of your power. One thing I've chatted about with people, but never really told, I was saying, like, for example, in my place in a workplace, I said, I wonder if everybody would be willing to put their name in a hat, and half the people get fired. Not fired, you have to leave. And so by doing that, then, you know, the process has to begin to rehire people, you know, who were these understandably, you know, woke, smart people, like a whole new, like, would they be even rehired back? They could try to apply for their job back, but no, just give it up. And that's another example that I always loved, and a lot of even universities won't do it. It's like Malcolm Gladwell in one of his books, I think he used Harvard as an example. He was like, you know, to get into Harvard by now, because you know the type of people who apply and want to be there so bad that it should be a lottery. You know, out of all the people who apply, you know, you have your number that only, you know, 10% will get in, and it's not the 10% who have the highest SAT score. And really, Harvard doesn't even do that because they let so many legacy in. You know, they're going to let you in if your granddaddy went there. You know, that's just a matter of fact. You know, your SAT or GPA doesn't have to be all that high, but just put all of them in the bucket and just let it, you know, let it be a lottery. Just pull out randomly, which somebody would figure out a way to mess that up. But, you know, they should almost do that at UNC Chapel Hill too. And Duke definitely should do it because of what they kind of messed up and got like 10,000 more applications for freshmen than they expected. I was like, I'll just put them all in a lottery and see who, you know. And if people knew that they weren't just getting in because of the race of their skin all the time, wow, wouldn't that be great? You know, that would be great, I think, actually. Let's have a lottery.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for your time. Acacia had to pop off for class, and I've got to pop off for class soon. So I just wanted to make sure to say thank you for the time. And if we're going to wrap up, you've really helped us kind of tie everything together. I think so. I think so. So we appreciate it. We appreciate it. Yes, and we're recording it as well. So we're recording as well. So I don't know if